Hello, everyone. I'm down here in Mar-a-Lago, and I'm going to be interviewing our real president, Donald J. Trump. This is very exciting for me. I never thought I'd be the interviewer. Usually I'm the interviewee. And I've got a lot of questions I wrote that I don't believe he's been asked. Some of them I know he hasn't been asked. And I'm very excited to see that we can all share and hear some of the things that the questions that all of you out there wanted to hear when we asked you all what would you like to hear in this interview. And so enjoy, and we'll see you when it's over. Well, it seems like a lifetime ago that we met in August of 2016.
Right.
And my whole life I didn't think politics affected me at all. And one of the things that you've shown us all is that it affects almost everything in our lives that politics do. And I've told many people that you have a gift of problem, solution, and what it would manifest to. And I think that's that's why I thought that you'd be the best president ever when I left that office. And one of the things, all the decisions that you made manifested to December of 2019, where it was the best time in history, where Merry Christmas, we had the lowest unemployment,
We had
the highest consumer confidence. But I want to ask you a question that you probably haven't been asked, and that's is running the country, was it what you expected it to be, or was it like when you were running your business?
So I would say there are things you can learn, and you have learned from running a business, but there's nothing like running this country. And part of it is a beautiful thing, and part of it is a horrible thing. We were attacked from every angle.
Right.
We want to do things that were good, that you understand are good, and anybody with common sense understands it's good. And we had impeachment hoax number one, impeachment hoax number two, the Mueller thing, which proved no collusion, and all of these different things happened. And I've always said that I had two jobs: to run the country, and I think we did better than just about anybody. We did a job on employment and on, you look at energy, we were energy independent. Look at what's happening now, and our military, we rebuilt it. We did so many things. It was an incredible period of time. But I had to run the country, and I had to survive.
Yeah.
And the survival was by far the tougher. We were just being hit on by every single group, these radical left groups. And actually, they're very dangerous for our country.
Right, absolutely. If you took that aside, though, so it was because of stuff you learned in business, if you have a problem and solution, I mean, you do have a gift of it's knowing what will manifest to help all people.
Right.
And I think you've shown what a politician should be. To help the people, not just
solving problems.
Or solving problems. Common sense.
Yeah, a lot of common sense. You're right.
Okay, now we look at the exact opposite that's there, what political decisions can do. And can you believe how fast our country's being destroyed? And, we've skipped, I thought everyone was saying socialism's coming. We've skipped right over it to communism.
Yeah. I really agree with that. If you look at the press, the radical, it's become a radicalized press, but we don't have freedom of the press anymore. And you're absolutely right. That's the first step toward communism. We don't have any press. They don't cover. If you do something great, Mike, and you've done some great things, they won't report it.
I call that going Fox on you.
Yeah, well,
don't go Fox on me.
No, I understand that. I understand exactly what you're saying. But the fact is you've done incredible things, and they won't report it. If you're a little bit offline, if you have a little bad day, they make it look like it's one of the worst days in history. And actually, the worst is if you do something good, they'll actually make it into like you did something bad. No, the press is very, very dishonest, and it's really to the detriment of our country.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest evil we have right now, or the biggest detriment. A year ago, we watched the biggest crime in history unfold right before our eyes. You've compared it to a robbing of a diamond store, and they were caught, and we had enough evidence, I believe, to pass it out to 300 and some million people. Here, you take a piece, you take a piece, and everybody went to prison for life. And they, I don't believe that this, we all saw the evidence, but no judges. I want to tell you, no judges, including the Supreme Court, looked at the evidence. They just kicked the can down the road and said, "We're no standing, no standing." And do you think that all that could have happened without the corrupt media? I mean, that was the big cover-up, wasn't it?
No, if the media were not involved in this cover-up. And they were involved together. It was
Oh, yeah,
collusion
yeah.
because they were communicating together.
Mhm.
I remember they used the word, it was a manufactured something. And all of a sudden it was on ABC, NBC, CBS. It was on everything. It
Yeah.
was a word, and they passed it out. It's almost like they said, because it wasn't a word you'd ever use
Right.
for politics. The
Right.
word was manufactured. And the headline of every newscast was manufactured. They were told to use it. No, they're very, they've colluded. It's just a terrible thing that's happened to our country, and it's got to straighten out.
Yeah, it does. I tell a journalist every day, just had one here today from the Huffington Post. I said, why do you want to destroy our country?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what, you know, I told him, you know, you attack myself, my employees, my company. I'm going, what am I doing? Just trying to get the word out, to, you know, of something to help save our country.
But they don't let you get an honest word
Yeah,
out. They'll
no.
take what you say and they'll make it like totally different. You won't even recognize it
I know.
the next day. And it really is misinformation
Yeah.
or disinformation. What they do is, in terms of disinformation, it's genius, but so bad for
It is.
this country.
Well, you get that, or they don't talk. I mean, they go completely
Right.
talk. When I had the cyber symposium, getting a little ahead here, but when I had that, afterwards, nobody won the $5 million prize because it was all evidence from the 2020 election.
Yeah.
And then they went completely Fox on me, or completely silent, I say. Nobody talked. They didn't do a bad story about me for 9 days.
Yeah.
Then they said I sold my plane because I went broke trying to find the product as I'm flying around it. And then the next day I tell them, I didn't sell my plane. I said, I just hired 200 more employees. And they go, the next day the article comes out, Mike Lindell hires 200 more employees. He's making money off this.
Yes.
You know.
I know.
But
Very sad when you look at what the networks, even the ones that are supposedly on our side, and there are not many.
right.
And there is no side. What we want is a strong military, great education for our children, a nice house to live in. You know, it's so basic.
Common
it's
sense,
so simple.
common sense things.
And they fight us. It's very sad.
disgusting. It's disgusting. Well, you go back to November 4th, and we all lived this twilight zone. I always say, like, there was an old saying, you know, if a tree falls in the forest and no one heard it, did it really fall? Well, then the media tells us there is no forest.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was back in November and December. And,
And now.
you know, I know, but we were all living in this twilight zone. You were living there with us. But then you had all the betrayals and attacks on you that escalated to a whole nother level. And Eric told me once that you said right before you were going down that escalator to make your famous announcement, that you said, well, we're going to find out now who our true friends are.
That's true.
And I never forgot that he said that to me. And, you know, it was everyone out there since that time. We've all been praying for you to have strength. And my question is, what does give you the emotional strength to handle it all?
Well, you know, it's interesting you mention people because I've had some disloyal people, and we always do through life. You know, you put somebody in, you think they're great. Sometimes you put somebody in, you're not so sure, and they turn out to be great. But I've also had tremendous people in the White House. We had some tremendous successes. We had some really very, very talented people. But we also had people that were very bad and very incompetent. You put them in, they're highly recommended by rhinos and others.
What, the Kemps of the world?
Yeah, well, and they just don't do. No, he was very disappointing. I mean, I got him elected. If it wasn't for me, he wouldn't be governor
Right.
of Georgia. He wouldn't even be close. He would have lost. He wouldn't have won the primary to start off with. And he wouldn't have run the race against Stacey Abrams. So he was a tremendous disappointment. And all we wanted was voter integrity. That's all we wanted. So it was very sad. And there are others. For the most part, it has been loyal. I mean, it really, I've had great loyalty from a lot of people. Now, people don't want to write about them. You know, it's not as exciting or doesn't sell the print.
But I mean the emotional strength. Where do you get the emotional strength from? Because we pray for you all the time to have that.
People ask. It's not only from that. It's just the whole. They come at you from every
the
different
attacks
side.
and everything.
I went 4 years.
The weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, and now you read and it was totally phony to start off with, but now you're reading all about the Russia thing. It was a hoax.
Yep.
It was set up by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats and paid for, and they dealt with Russia.
Right.
Now, what could be crazier than that? It just came out today, as you see, they nabbed another one. And her lawyer was involved. I mean, the whole thing, Durham, while it's taking a long time,
Right.
it's very devastating things that he's coming out with for them.
Right.
So that was a hoax. The phone call with Ukraine, it was a perfect. I say a perfect call.
Absolutely.
You got impeached over a phone call. That was a perfect call. I'll never forget Tim Scott, who was a terrific man and a terrific senator from South Carolina. He read the call. Fortunately, I had people transcribing it. Had they known that, they would have never done the impeachment because they found out much later.
Right.
But fortunately, we had it. But Tim Scott said, he read the call. It was a perfect call. What are you doing?
Right.
But they were down the line. They said, let's just keep going. These are people
the attacks.
they're bad people
No.
in many ways.
So you love the country so much that you're just, you've got better things to do,
Yeah. No, I love the country, and we made such progress, and we've done so many things, even though it was you're constantly under attack, constantly.
Right.
And by the way, do you hear that beautiful tropical rain? Isn't that incredible?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Really come down. One thing in Florida, when it comes down, it comes down hard.
Yeah.
But no, I love the country, and I had a goal, and the goal was to do what we did. And I think you can almost say that few presidents, if any, did what we did when we rebuilt the military, when we did so
amazing.
much.
Yeah.
And we did it under a lot of pressure because there was so many other outside forces that were fighting us. I just considered it a great honor.
No.
I was very disappointed, as you were, as millions of people were. I think I read 78% of one of our great parties felt that the election was rigged and stolen. And it was rigged. It was
well, that brings up, you've got, you talk about betrayal. You have Bill Barr that before the election says, that machines could be hacked and China could be, we have to worry about China. Then he says to everyone, to the whole country, there's not enough evidence to overturn the election. Then we find out now, we're finding all this later, he sends a letter, an email, whatever, and ordering an attorney or a U.S. attorney in Pennsylvania not to look at the evidence. Yeah. I mean, that's shameful. And then you got like Chris Krebs that said it was the fairest election ever, the best election ever. And then a couple months later, he's on MSNBC. And what does he say? They said, what's the biggest threat to our country? China attacking us in a cyber attack right down to the local races. I said, what, did he copy the evidence? I mean, I don't think, people, it was to live in the twilight zone there. And then Radcliffe, how about January 7th when John Radcliffe, the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, whatever, he comes out with a letter saying that the evidence of China tech had been suppressed. And then, isn't that kind of funny? But the same day, they took away all our freedom of speech. They took away your social media. The media went into this attack. At that point, I mean, that had to be, at least for me, I'm going, this can't even be real. They take away the president's voice and millions of us. I mean, at that point was, how were you feeling then? I mean, was it like a disbelief or was it
So I had hundreds of millions of people too.
Yeah.
We had a tremendous, whether it was Twitter or it was Instagram, Facebook. I had, just massive numbers of people. And all of a sudden, one day you wake up and you don't have that voice anymore and you have to rebuild it in a sense. In a different form.
Right.
That was terrible. You mentioned Barr. That was very disappointing. You mentioned Krebs. I don't know Krebs. I don't even know who this guy is, but I see him on television all the time on CNN and MSDNC, as I call it. This guy was talking about the honesty of elections. Well, all you have to do is take a look at some of the reports that have come out since all of that. These elections were incredibly dishonest. Arizona, where they put the findings, thousands and thousands and thousands of votes. Far more than you need. You look at Georgia, it was terrible. Right. You look at Pennsylvania. Now, the good news is a lot of those states, Pennsylvania's got subpoenas now all over the place. They're going to get to the bottom of it. Right. You see what happened today in Wisconsin, where they found thousands and thousands of votes.
Right.
It was just corrupt. And things are happening. Now,
well, you've said let's fix 2020 first.
Well, I think it's important that they know what happened in 2020. And once you know what happened, they have a decision to make. Look, I think enough people know what happened. You look at Arizona, we don't need all those states. We need 2 big ones and 3 small ones, I guess. It's separately. You can have 2 big ones or you can have 3 small ones, something like that. But we know what happened.
Right.
You see it in the reports. You see it in everything. And also they're guarding. They're so guarding it. They don't want to give the votes. They don't want to give the ballots. Mail-in ballots are a disaster. They basically use COVID-19 or the China virus to rig the election, and it's a shame.
Yep.
And I hope the Republicans get tougher. Mitch McConnell's
They
a
need to.
disaster. The guy's a disaster, the old crow. He should have never approved that. He should have never allowed. And it was very sad when Mike Pence gave those votes over, because when you have more votes than you have voters, when you have other things that are so wrong, and that was then. Now, since then, many other things have happened, which show that you were right and I was right, and people were right that were looking at it.
Right.
It's a very sad thing. We proved two things. Number one, the press is dishonest, and number two, and some people thought it, but it had a very high approval rating. Now it's got lower than Congress.
Right.
Press is dishonest. We have a very dishonest press. And we have rigged elections. And, of course, we have horrible borders. But we had the best border that we've ever had in the history of our country. That means drugs and people.
Absolutely.
And now it's the worst. In a period of 9 months, it went from the best ever to the worst ever.
No, you're exactly right. But I've said it before, and I've been telling everybody, everyone says, well, Mike, when are the machines going to be on? When's our real president coming back in? I get these questions all the time. And I said, you know what? God's had his hand in all of this, I believe. Look what's happened on the positive side. We've seen evil rise up, and you see all the bad politicians. You see all the where the corruption was. So more and more is getting revealed every day. And I say it's like two buckets. You have a bucket here with everyone that knows it was rigged, and everyone knows what happened. Back then, if Democrats are going, hey, even though they're on the winning side of a rigged football game, they're going, they don't want to believe it. Now, even 35% of them say it was a rigged election, and they want to believe it. Why? Because of all the horrific things that are going on in our country. And I believe their eyes are getting opened up, because nobody believes the fake media anymore, the crooked media. Do you think we'll be able to beat the media? Don't you think that's the big win, getting around to get our voices out? You do your great letter.
I think we're getting our voices out. I think we're getting them out. That's why they realize that watching some of these, you look at the ratings on television, the ratings are so low because they've lost credibility. But I think when you talk about silencing of the press, I really think it's because they have one subject they don't want to talk about, and that was the 2020 presidential election scam. And it all evolves around that, whether it's Hunter Biden that they silence. When the New York Post came out with those exposés, those horrible exposés, they tried to put the New York Post out of business. Nobody ever heard it. That should have been a big story in every paper. Nobody ever covered it. They don't want to get anywhere near the election fraud because we're too close.
Right.
They don't want it to be revealed. They will do anything to stop it. And when you hear silence, when you hear all of that, that's the thing they want silence. Because you read that Time magazine article, the cover of Time magazine.
Well, they bragged about it.
It basically, they couldn't help themselves.
Yeah.
They did it, and they're saying, we gotta, it wasn't a full brag, it had to say it, but it was a brag.
Absolutely.
And that's the way it happened. That's a part of the way it happened. But they couldn't help themselves. They did something they can't believe.
Right.
And they needed much more because we did much better. We got so many votes. We swamped them. And they just went crazy that night. And for a short time thereafter. But they don't want to talk about it. But they did talk about it in Time magazine. It was very interesting.
Well, we've also, we've been with you, holding firm to let's fix 2020 first.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, millions upon millions of people now are getting the courage, and they're out there on the ground. Their audits are getting done. They're doing, they're encouraged. We got to have fair elections. Our country's gone. If it's not fixed by 2022, it's over.
And Mike, I have good people and bad people. But I have a lot of good people say, sir, forget about 2020. You're going to win. You're way up in the polls. You're going to win. I say, we're not going to have a country in 3 years.
No
This
way.
guy did this in 9 months. He destroyed our country. I say, make America great again. That was my theme. And it was going to be keep America great. I gave that away. I threw them all away, the hats. It's not because America's not great now.
No.
America is a laughing stock all over the world. When you have Afghanistan with that horrible tragedy that happened in Afghanistan, when you have millions of people pouring in, we have no idea who they are, just pouring into our country, they could have finished the wall in 2 weeks. They could have had the wall done. It was almost finished. 500 miles of wall. It was almost finished. They wanted to be open. At first, I thought they were incompetent. And now I realize they actually want it open. They want open borders.
there's
We're going
an
to have
agenda.
tens of millions of people pouring in. We have no idea who they are.
Well, there's an agenda behind it. You know, for me, you know, from the time I met you and I got, you know, came into politics, went all in, you know, that they just made sense because of your common sense solutions.
Yeah.
And I have seen, of all the politicians I met now, I can count on two hands, if that, maybe one hand, of the politicians that have the people's back like you do,
Yeah. No,
where
I
you're
understand.
making decisions. So I tell everyone, I tell even my, you know, I have no Democrats and liberal friends. I'm going, all you got to do is look at the decisions that are being made right now. You know, if they don't help anybody,
Right.
they've got their own agenda, you know. And I always said,
Well, look at the money they make. They're full-time politicians, Pelosi and all these people, Waters,
right,
Obama. I expected to lose a lot of money.
right,
I lost billions. I expected that. It was okay.
right.
These people made money being president.
Yep.
And if somebody from Saudi Arabia stays at a suite one night for peanuts,
Right.
even though I'm willing to lose billions of dollars, and they stay and they pay $600 or whatever it is, they'll make like, oh, somebody stayed at a suite. I mean, it's the most incredible thing.
It's nonsense.
But these people have made a fortune. Many of them have made a fortune. And I was prepared. I felt that if I go in, I mean, the brand, all of a sudden, half the people like you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Been
it's
there.
more than that. I actually do. I think it's more than
yeah.
that.
Oh, it
You know,
is,
Mike,
yeah.
I don't think it's a 50-50 country.
Oh, no.
When you have things like no voter ID, defund the police, open borders, sanctuary cities, all of the stuff they have, I don't believe 50% of the people vote for them.
No.
I think they cheat on
No,
elections
they absolutely
and they do other
cheat.
things, and that gets them up to that 50%. But they can't have 50% with those policies.
Absolutely not. And you know, when you were president, I kept telling people everybody loves our president. Some just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And what was happening is here's a bucket of people, the stuff you did. Or here's people that voted for you. Okay, and here's another bucket again. And I keep telling you, there isn't one thing you ever did which a person would go that way. So it was a constant pouring of the people over here. And you know, the real total is you got over 80 million votes. That's fact. I've got that. That's fact. Over 80 million, the most of anybody in history.
Yeah.
You know, and people over here, they're waking up. They're not only. I believe we get through this, and it's just going to be an amazing place. But we had to go through it all.
Well, the
and you were
beauty
able
is-
to smash that and just.
Well, you have been so brave. You're an incredible patriot. You have been so brave. I'll never forget the first rally. I've seen you for years on television, but I never met you. And I'm making a speech, and I think Alabama, I had like 65,000 people in the audience, and I see you. I said, that's the pillow guy. I can't believe it. The pillow guy is here. But you're an incredible patriot, and people love you.
No. Well, it becomes pretty easy when we lose our country,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like, you know.
But isn't it amazing? You give the facts.
Yeah.
You say, here's how they cheated. Because, you know, now we know much more than we did a few months ago, and every month we learn more. When you look at what happened in Wisconsin, when you look at what they just did in Arizona, they just found some in Pima County.
Yeah, Pima County. 100% of the people voted that live in the county.
Yeah, that's right.
And
No, the
everyone,
whole
you
thing,
know.
they just found this out 2 days ago. And you see it. And you present it to politicians that are friends of ours, sort of.
Yeah,
And they said, oh, don't worry, you're going to win next time. I say, wait a minute.
there is no next time.
There is none.
Yeah,
You're not going to have a country left. But and I'm saying these are good people.
Right.
They say, oh, don't worry about it. 45,000 votes,
Right.
which is far more than you need, right?
Right.
Don't worry about it. You're going to win next time. I say, where do they come? Now, then we have the other kind that are so on our side.
right.
But I'm amazed that so many people say, sir, you're doing so well. Don't worry, you're going to win the next time.
Right.
That means that we're allowed to have a president that had all of this stuff going on,
Right.
running our country.
Which didn't.
And he's doing such a poor job.
No.
It's not like, wow, the country's... And that, in theory, shouldn't matter either. But the fact is we have somebody that's destroying our country. You look at inflation, you look at the economy,
Everything.
you look at Afghanistan. That was the most embarrassing moment for our country,
In history.
in the history of our country. You look at every single thing, even look at the supply chains. did you ever hear even a question of a problem with the supply chain?
Right.
So you have thousands of ships probably causing you a lot of problem in your business.
They're all lucky I make a lot of my product
Yeah,
here.
you make it here.
But I'll tell you this: if I'd have been their marketer, and on inauguration day, I would have gotten in a room and said, okay, let's not do anything stupid to ruin the country until they shut up about the 2020 election.
Yeah.
But what do they do the first day? They lay off 50,000 union jobs, shut the pipeline down. They knew what that would manifest to. It's not just what you pay in gas. All the shipping right now, it's going to be double-digit inflation. People have no idea what's coming, and it's all because of what? The steal of the November 3rd
Mike, I
election.
closed the Russian pipeline to Europe and to Germany. I closed the Russian pipeline all over Europe. I closed it.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, he's so friendly with Russia. That's the biggest thing you could do.
Mm-hmm.
And I got along with Putin.
Yeah.
I got along with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I ran it like you're supposed to run it.
Right.
And then Biden comes along and he opens it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest thing you can do. But he closes our Keystone pipeline.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine
that? Doesn't even make sense. Yeah.
No, it doesn't make
And
sense.
13 of them have committed suicide right away. They were promised
Right.
jobs.
And then he gets good publicity. He closes it, and they hardly talk about it. They don't talk about Afghanistan anymore. You never see it on the news. That story disappeared weeks ago. The most embarrassing thing ever happened to our country. We fled. We surrendered. 13 young people were killed. They don't talk about the people whose arms are gone, whose legs are gone.
No.
You know, we had 28 soldiers, no legs, no arms. One had 2 legs gone, 1 arm gone. They don't even talk about those people. We left Americans behind by the thousands, possibly, and we left. And he took the military out before all the others. And then we left $85 billion worth of equipment. And people don't talk about it. When was the last time you heard the word Afghanistan? You and I talked about it.
You did. You know what it was? Not even 2 days later, or a couple of days later, he gets on TV and talks about if you have 100 people, you have a mandate in your company. If you have more than 100 employees, that was just a deflection to not talk about Afghanistan. So everybody gets up in there.
That's one of the reasons also that our economy is going bad, the mandate.
I want to put in closing, I want to say there's, back to the election of 2020, I want to thank you, and everyone does, for standing firm on that, because anyone that moves on from that, then you're saying you're okay with that. And you've given strength to millions of people that are behind you, and we're going to get it gone. I've said we're going to melt down the machines and use them into prison bars.
That's very interesting. It's a very good idea. But of all the things I talk about, like at rallies, we have these great rallies, 69,000 people, 55,000 people. We're going to Nevada soon. We got a massive field, and it's going to be packed instantly. So I can feel an audience, so can you. The thing they want to talk about more than any other subject is the election fraud of 2020, because they want that fixed, because they can't have a country without that. I used to say borders. We got to have borders. We don't have borders. But we don't have elections, and we don't have a free and fair press. So this country has a long way to go.
Well, I've said it before too. If you have a cyber attack, which I've stood firm on that. I have the evidence. And if you have a cyber attack, you have cyber attacks every day. We have it on our gas line. We have it on credit card companies, businesses like ours. When you have this, it's like you got protection. Well, your geeks are better than the good geeks are better than the bad geeks. And then virus protection and all this.
Right.
Well, if you get through, what it amounts to is just a money thing. But when you get through an election, you take everything. Our freedoms, everything. And that's where I think, where people have to realize out there, even I really believe, if I've told journalists out there, do you care about your country? But their bosses, whatever, they can't even print something good if they wanted to. And that's so hard getting around. You almost got to use the bad media to even get the word out,
Well, it's incredible when communities like Milwaukee, they don't want to show their records, okay?
Yeah.
Philadelphia, known as being one of the most corrupt places, and especially as it pertains to election. But Detroit is the king of them all.
Right.
And they don't want to have you look at anything.
Right.
And you found out that in much easier times where the mail-in stuff was, much tougher, they found 5%. Now in times where many, many times the number go out, they find it's less than one hundredth of 1%. In other words, it's never corrupt. You know it's massively corrupt because it has to be much more than before they sent all of
Well, it
these
is.
things.
This is the only election in history where you have all these states where massive amounts of non-residents voted in each state, or people that were dead. Well, of course they didn't vote. They used their names. What we've been doing around is getting all the states who registered their voter rolls and the people that registered, that on their voter rolls afterward, so we can get it. Everyone can have access to these. We have access to them, and you look at these anomalies, going, okay, this county has this many people, but yet 2,000 more people voted that live there.
No. We have more votes than you have people.
Yeah,
and they
there's
try
a
and pretend there's nothing wrong with that. And it amazes me where these communities, though, don't want to have anyone see it. In fact, they get rid of the evidence, and they don't want to have anyone. And you're not talking about a lot of votes. A lot of votes are cheated on, but we lost by so little.
Right. Well, they did it cheated just enough to, you got so many votes that they had to, broke everything, the algorithms on 11 o'clock on election night.
Yeah.
One of the things, you can take apart everything, the deviations that I've seen. One of the things, I watched Arizona for a week. It took a week to count 2% of the vote. Well, they had to spend a week figuring out, because you were going to go by 80,000. You won Arizona by 250,000 votes. Wow. They had to figure out how are we going to cheat. It took them a week. Michigan, they were easy. You know what they did? They dumped 100 and some thousand votes for Biden in the middle of the night. You can watch it. And then they say to us, what? Well, those were those mail-in votes. Yeah. Well, here, what people don't know.
When you look at that chart in Michigan,
where
it's going along, and then all of a sudden it spikes up to the ceiling.
Right. And what people don't realize is those weren't mail-in votes. The mail-in votes were not counted in the middle of the night on the 4th. They were the first votes counted on the morning of the 3rd.
That's right.
So you say that to people. One of the things that when you had that conversation with terrible, crooked Brad Rassenberger in Georgia, that phone call, that right there should, everyone in this country should have said, you need to show your stuff, Rassenberger, because you asked him, well, gee, you had 15,000 non-resident voted, 6,000, it was right in front of all these stats. Yeah. And and I remember you saying, and he goes, can you give us a couple of these people can't vote. And he said, well, those aren't the real numbers. And you said, well, where are the real numbers? And one of your attorneys, whatever, said, we got them from him, sir. Yeah. And then you asked him, when are we going to get the real numbers? He never provided the real numbers, ever.
And they said they were going to meet, and we never met. They would never meet. And he said, I think there were 2 dead people, right?
Yeah.
Not thousands. There were 2 dead people. He said that on the call. It's not even believable what's taking place. You know what else isn't believable? You have somebody called, and even Republicans like the rhinos, they sort of just want to get on with life.
That's sad.
And you say, why? Yeah. Is it dishonesty or is it complacency? What is it? Yeah. But you are a fighter, and I'll tell you, this country someday, I really believe this country someday is going to be very appreciative of what you've done.
Thank you. But sir, I give my glory to God.
But you are you're a great patriot.
I will say this, what I've learned,
Just after this.
What's that?
We just have to wrap right after this.
Yep. I want to say one more thing here. What surprises me is since the cyber symposium, I've been going into the red states. You'd think you'd get their voter rolls, show them, and say, hey, let's look inside your machines, right through to your routers. Here's what happened here. You go to a residence where one person lives there, you find out 12 live there, but they didn't. They just used their name.
Right.
So you show them this, you show them all this, and yet they'll go, no, we were secure. I'm going, look at it. Some of them are people, and it's like you say, why are you being complacent? It's almost like if we did nothing, if we let 2020 didn't let it go, you know what they'd be saying 2 years from now? Well, I wish we'd have listened.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think we're doing a very important thing. We're going to find out. You mentioned red states. It's very interesting that we went to Texas. They wanted to have a big thing, even though I won Texas by a lot.
Yeah.
We should have won it by much, much more. Texas is not a blue state, okay?
Right.
And we had a tremendous victory in Texas and in Florida. Mm-hmm. But I have no doubt that there were a lot of things that went on, and they should really get to it. Because you're going to lose elections in those states eventually. Right. You're going to lose Texas at some point, and you didn't really lose it.
Right. The most votes were California #1 stole, and Texas #2, Florida #3. Yeah. It was all 50 states, and
if we didn't swamp them in Texas and Florida, I wouldn't have won those two states.
I would have took them. You're exactly right. Well, we're going to get through it all, and I believe that when we get way out here, we're going to look back and all this had to happen just the way God intended it, because everything that you did to show us what great leadership should be and what it can manifest to help all people while we're alive and to have a great life in this country, the best country in the world. And I want to thank you, as millions do, for being the greatest president we've ever had.
Well, thank you,
And
Mike.
we appreciate you so much.
It's really an honor. And the good news is we're going to look back at what they did, and we're going to say they did a terrible job. So they won't be able to talk.
Right.
Because the job they've done is record-setting bad, and we're going to take back our country.
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, God bless you. Thank you, sir.
very much.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Was that awesome or what? Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the interview. But I want you all to do something now. Go out and tell everybody you know that the attorneys general from the states are putting a lawsuit in on November 23rd, 2 days before Thanksgiving, to sue the United States government over the 2020 election. And here's a little bonus. From Wednesday night at midnight before Thanksgiving all the way to Sunday night at midnight on Lindell TV, we're going to live stream for 96 hours straight so you can get everyone you know. You're sitting around Thanksgiving, tune us in. We're on the Roku channel. Get everybody you can in your house to watch. This is the time we all have to come together, unite our country, and show everybody what happened in the 2020 election and help save our country. Thank you.